What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Community Farm Alliance podcast. I'm your host for the Blackberry series. My name is Vaughn Barnes, and I have with me today Fatima Jackson from Action Jackson Farm in Mercer County. Fatima, tell us, when did the farm get started?
The farm started in 2012, and I would say this operation, started in 2012 when the first tract of land was purchased.
How did that happen? Where was it at?
Well, it's actually sits right across from my mother-in-law. And at that point, my husband and I were living in Indiana, and we had no kids at that point. And so the house was pretty much a foreclosure, had to have a lot of fixes and had the tract of land attached to it. And so we thought, well, why not bid on it and see if we could just rent it and it will be like a retirement place. So we were bidding with a neighbor and ended up winning the bid. It's crazy. But anyway, we purchased it, got a loan to purchase this property, and lived in Indiana till 2016 after we had our first son, and we decided to relocate to Kentucky.
So wait a minute, you had the farm for 4 years without doing anything with it?
No, we were making improvements. So we would commute on the weekends or holidays to the farm and make improvements to it, plant grasses. So we've been working, making fences, working. So it was a busy 4 years trying to get things ready for us to move.
When people talk about farms, they don't realize how much time it actually takes to make it happen. So for you saying it was 4 years, 4 years is a lot of time from purchase to actually move on the property.
Yes, because at that point we had limited funds, and then you have to think about some of the county programs that they had with NRCS. Some years you apply, you don't get it. So you kind of plan your project based on what funding you're able to get. And some of them require matching funds. So we had to plan, okay, what do we do this year and what do we do next year? That kind of thing.
What is NRCS? Talk a little bit about NRCS and how that worked in the operation.
Is the Natural Resources Conservation Service, I think is what that is. And we have one. I guess everyone has a county office that they kind of deal with. And the agent comes in and looks at your property and makes both you and the agent make a plan on what practices you could implement on your property, conservation practices. And some of those practices sometimes end up benefiting the farmer because if you think about livestock, and one of the conservation practice is to protect water. And so if you have a pond on your property, you could make fences to kind of protect that. And in the meantime, those fences could help prevent your animals from getting out off the property.
So you use the land to help supply water based on your pond.
Well, if you think about pond, it's a natural resource, or it's a creek where water passes through maybe your property to another property. The goal is to not pollute those water resources. And so that's where the conservation piece comes in, where you make sure that to protect it from animals getting in, pooping in the water, kind of polluting it. So you want to build, so the conservation practice is to build like a fence around that water resource to make sure that it's protected from getting contaminated. And that's just one practice. There's numerous practices that the NRCS service has that people can take advantage of. The thing about it is administered by the county, so it depends on your county. It depends on what projects they fund. There's different things. I wish there was a little bit visibility to the process, especially when you get to the county level, but it is what it is. I guess with time, these things will get some improvements.
You guys got 40 acres on the first go round, and it took 4 years to get that into motion.
Yeah.
What happened after that first 40 acres?
Well, after the first 40 acres, we got a few goats. I was growing a few vegetables, just selling very little. I was lucky if I sold up to $1,000 in a year, but that's kind of what we're doing, testing different things. And then in 2017, we had another foreclosure of a neighbor close to us. They kind of approached us, and we purchased it through one of those ag lending banks. And so we purchased that tract of land. And so that's kind of how we got to the 80 acres that we currently.
Now that tract of land plus your tract of land, are they adjacent to each other?
No.
Are they separate?
They're separate. They're like down the road. So it's kind of like a 1 minute, 2 minutes drive from the house to that tract of land. And both these lands sat vacant for multiple years. Like the one we purchased the second time sat vacant for 20 years without nobody touching it. I mean, it was a mess to clean up that land. There was different invasive plants. The pond was green. It took a lot of work to clean it up.
Did you know that CFA is a nonprofit organization that supports family farms, equity work, food access, and policy work across Kentucky? If you're interested in supporting any of this work, please go to cfaky.org and go to our Donate tab in order to donate or become a member today. We really appreciate any and all help that we get, and it goes back to helping both farmers and consumers across the Bluegrass State. For more information, go to www.cfaky.org. Once again, that's www.cfaky.org. Thank you. And now back to our show.
So before we left, you mentioned that the land was difficult to deal with and it sat vacant for a long time. How did you manage to get it to where it was a functional farm?
Well, to get it to a functional farm, most of it was woods and a lot of brush. So we did a little bit of cleanup, not a lot, maybe figuring out trees that were at risk or, were already dead, kind of just clean that up was the first step. And then the next step was kind of getting into goats. And to be honest, we thought we were going to go with cattle in the beginning. And we quickly realized that the cattle business was a very expensive business to get into. And so we decided to not go that route. And
Talk a little bit about that. What made cattle the no-go business for you? Like why goats of all animals?
Well, to be honest, I'm sure there's other farmers that raise cattle and it works well for them. But for us, having a young growing family, we thought that going the cattle route was going to be financially and labor intensive. And we figured with the goats, we could start small. And one of the reasons we got into goats was actually because of me. I was born and raised in Nigeria, and I grew up eating goat meat. And so when I would go purchase goat meat, I did not like the product that I was getting. And so that's what sparked that let's get into goats conversation with my husband and I. And that's kind of how we got into goat. And when I got interested in the raising genetics that are specific to what I like to eat and also what the customer prefers to eat. Because I'm sure you may be aware of this already, but goat meat is one of the few, or pretty much one of the livestock that is still being imported frozen from Australia and New Zealand. So there's a high demand of fresh goat meat in the US. So what we're producing is not meeting the demand. And I think even over the years, I think in the early 90s, the goat numbers kind of went up and then it went down. And I think it's still kind of down compared to where the demand is. So we thought that might be a good industry to kind of get into and grow into.
With all the goats that you guys have, or the property that you have with all the goats, do you guys do dairy, or is it just meat?
Just meat. So in the beginning, we kind of started with Kiko. And the reasoning behind this was they were very hardy goats. They were very hardy goats when it comes to parasites and other traits, good mothers. However, the temperament did not fit our operation. So, you have goats getting their head stuck in fences, jumping from one field to the other. That was not a temperament that fit our lifestyle. And so that's where we kind of switched to myotonics. So myotonics are what people refer to the fainting goats, and they're very popular because people think of them as pets. However, unknown to many, there are mid-sized myotonics that are a little bit larger framed that are used for meat. So that's the breed we went to. We also have other commercial does that comprises of Kiko, boar, but the buck is really where you make a difference in your genetics. And so we decided to go with the myotonic meat goats.
Why is the buck, or what about the buck makes the genetics different? Is it like, does it determine the size, or does it determine the horns? Do they all come with beards? Like, what makes the buck the one?
Well, if you think about a buck, so you have one buck and say you have 20 does, and you breed that buck to that 20 does, and that buck has a particular trait that you're interested in. In this case, or in our case, it was meat, a very meaty goat that did not carry a lot of fat in it and had a good temperament. So the probability of him passing that trait onto the offsprings of those female is very high. And so with that buck, you can quickly improve the next generation of your goats by just using that one buck. So that's kind of what I was referring to, that the buck really makes the difference. And buck is I know you're aware of this, but for folks listening, a buck is a male goat and a doe is a female goat.
Oh yeah, now, so because you said that, let's throw a monkey wrench in there. And so what is a wether?
A wether is a castrated male goat.
And then the babies are called kids, and then the Daniels are the ones that have babies. Yeah.
And in our household, we confuse the two. What are you talking about? Are you talking about the goat kids or our kids? So that's kind of how the conversation goes.
My last question about the farm as it stands, where do you guys see yourself going with the farm now?
We're not looking to expand the farm right now. What we're looking to do is improve the genetics. When we first started, we were lucky and unlucky at the same time, meaning we were able to find good genetics from good breeders, and sometimes you get bad genetics as well, when you're trying to purchase and getting started. And so for this area, and I'm not saying one breed is better than another breed. I think that you can look at, okay, what are your goals and what breed will help you get to your goals in your farming business. And that's kind of how we look at it. The myotonic breed is really what meet our goals and the lifestyle of the farm that we're trying to build. And so our goal is to continue to perfect that genetics, because we feel like there's value in that long term. And there's not a lot of research done with goats. And so that's the other thing, is we're continuing to learn and research on our farm and to improve things before we really expand the herd beyond what it is. And also learn from other producers and also mentor other producers. We have other producers that come to our farm and kind of learn with us, especially those that are getting started in the business.
Farmers Market Support Program Services. Did you know that a program like this exists in the state of Kentucky? If your market has been around for a while, or maybe you are a new and existing market, we offer marketing development. We also offer business development. We want to offer programs as such like capital support to support your market managers. There's a cost share program. We can establish your market with the SNAP EBT program. And lastly, we provide network. For more information, please contact us at cfaky.org/FMS. Again, that is cfaky.org/FMSE.
This is where I like to talk about the future of what the farmer is going to do, or just your impression on other people in agriculture. So let's start there. What do you feel is the future for Action Jackson Farm?
The future for Action Jackson Farm is to continue to make improvements. And more importantly, we're looking to mentor and give back to other farmers, especially those that are beginning, and more importantly, those that look like us, because it's really tough starting out for farmers of color and Black farmers. So we're always looking to educate, share our experiences with other farmers. So that's the future, is maybe try to educate, do some kind of education on the farm and continue to improve our genetics.
Outside of the improvement of the genetics, and is it just sticking with myotonic, or are you adding another gene in there to try to increase the size from like the Kiko or the boar?
No. We thought about that because the myotonics, you're right, are slow growing. And so with careful selection, which we have been selecting for the larger frame ones, I know it's going to take a while, but hopefully we will get there. Just strictly using the myotonics. The Kikos and the boars, they're a very fast growing breed. And if you think about it in a meat operation, the pounds is where the money. So the more pounds you have, the more dollars you have. The other thing, when I talk about fitting our lifestyle, is temperament and hardiness. The Kikos, as I said, are hardy. However, the temperament does not fit what our goals are. But when you think about the boar, they're fast growing, which is really good for meat goat operation. However, the hardiness is they're more susceptible to things like parasites and things like that. The myotonic is an American breed, and so they are hardy goats. And they're very good mothers. The only caveat with them is the slow growth. And that's kind of where we're trying to use genetics to improve that part of it, to make sure that we kind of select for larger framed atonics.
Now, could you tell which ones will be larger just by the time that the babies are born? You see that at?
That's a good question. It's really hard. So most times you have to invest a lot of time in letting the animal grow, which is time that you're not selling them or making money. And so improving genetics can be a very expensive game. And so most of them, especially the bucks, you really have to wait till they're at least a year old to be able to make a judgment on how that animal is going to grow or how it's grown. The other thing we do is we grow them at we weigh them at multiple checkpoints. So what was their weight at 3 months, which is the weaning time? What was their weight at 180 days or 90 days? So we have these checkpoints that, we kind of check their weights and see how they grow.
To get away from the goats for a little second, in Indiana, before you guys got to Kentucky, you did what type of farm there?
Okay, so I had some crops. I was experimenting with a few, and I sold a few. And one of the crops was hot peppers. So I grew different types of hot peppers, like ghost pepper, habaneros, and Carolina Reapers, and sold those mostly to ethnic consumers that like really spicy food. And I like spicy food too. I can't handle it as much as I used to, but that's kind of where my market is. And fast forward to now, I still do a little bit of vegetables. And in addition to the hot peppers, I also grow garlic. And with garlic, it's easy to ship online. So that kind of deal. So those are the only two vegetables that I grow right now commercially. When I say commercially, it's not really large scale. Maybe, I make at least 1,000 or 2 a year selling those. It's pretty much what those vegetables bring in.
If some customer was listening right now, what would you tell your customers to come and buy from Action Jackson Farm?
Well, I would tell them to come buy some goat meat. So we do sell USDA goat meat. And one thing, folks, a lot of people don't know, goat meat is one of the leanest meats there is. It's really rich in nutrients and low in saturated fat. I know it's kind of a new thing to get a lot of Americans to get used to, but goat meat is a very nutritious meat. And by the way, April is goat month in Kentucky.
Yes, I seen that when Commissioner Quarles put that out.
Yes.
It's National Goat Month in Kentucky.
Yeah.
That's right. Everybody, go and buy some goat meat.
Yep.
So, this is that time of the Blackberries podcast. We all know what it is. Fatima, must ask you now, what berry best represents Action Jackson Farm?
Well, this is an interesting question. And I know you and I discussed it, but as I told you, I don't grow a lot of berries. However, I've grown strawberries, so I would go with strawberries.
Now, why does that represent the farm?
I was hoping you would not ask me why. But strawberries, I don't know, they're just refreshing. So I guess that's what it feels like to really live and work the land. It's really refreshing every day, and you learn new things and you grow in the process.
That's a good way to transition into my last area of questions. As a woman of color, farming, what is that like, and what are some words of encouragement that you can give to other women to get into the ag lifestyle, ag business?
I'm not sure well, for other women, I would say just have a goal of what you're trying to achieve. It really helps to have a goal and make sure that every decision you make leads to that goal. And don't try to do everything at once, and try to grow, try to learn, and keep improving.
And there you have it, folks. That was Fatima Jackson of Action Jackson Farm in Mercer County, Kentucky. And of course, I am Vaughn Barnes. As I always say, real change comes from the ground up. Until next time, peace.
Thanks.